Welcome to my show. A guest here. His name is Zak Mucha. Mr. Zak, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity, Mr. Zak. Firstly, you are an author. You are also a physioanalyst. Can you please, Mr. Zak, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mr. Zak?
My name is Zak Mucha. I'm a social worker and a psychoanalyst in Chicago. I'm in private practice. Uh, I started out as a social worker working in community mental health, working with people who are severely psychotic, uh, drug addiction problems, homelessness, incarceration. It was a lot of triage and a lot of crisis work. And I did that for 7 years. And in working with this really ignored population. I mean, these are the people we turn away from when we see them on the street. You know, even among the severe symptoms, you know, if we listen long enough and hard enough, we could see the trauma histories in these symptoms. These symptoms don't come from nowhere. It's not just quote unquote bad brain chemistry. And trauma is a huge part of all our symptoms, whether it's psychosis or anxiety or depression. And emotional abuse is one of the biggest traumas we have to deal with because it's pretty invisible.
Completely agree. We can't see an emotional abuse. Emotion is something we can't see. We can only feel it. And as you said earlier, trauma is also one of a source that definitely affects many ways. And the emotion are the ones that drive a lot of things. And also, I'm very much glad that you are also spending your time to help people who are, addicted to drug, and also which is really, really rampant today due to the rise of depression and anxiety we have in our time today. That is why I would like to dive to your book, Mr. Zak, Emotional Abuse. Can you please, Mr. Zak, discuss more on that book? And do you also plan to write more books in the coming future, Mr. Zak?
Uh, I'll answer the easy one first. I don't know. I mean, I always say I'm not going to write another book, but I always end up doing it. So I don't know what I'll do in the future. But this book, Emotional Abuse, it's subtitled A Manual for Self-Defense because I didn't want it to be full of psychoanalytic jargon, and I didn't want someone to have a master's degree to read it. It's literally supposed to be a manual for people to supplement their therapy, or if you can't get to therapy for whatever reason, it's literally supposed to be a guide to how do I recognize what's happening in my life.
Yes, and
And emotional abuse itself is tricky, like you're saying, it's invisible. There's so little evidence that it exists because someone could say my mother's a monster, and all the neighbors think she's wonderful, because she puts on a good show. I have the definition of emotional abuse that really was the start of this book is from Andrew Vax, who was a lawyer who defended children exclusively, and he literally across his lifetime changed how crimes against children are perceived in in the world. It's his work is stunning. But he defined emotional abuse as, and quote, emotional abuse is the systematic diminishment of another. It may be intentional or unconscious, but is always a choice of conduct, not a single event. It is a pattern of behavior in a relationship designed to reduce a person's self-perception to the point he considers himself unworthy. This perceived unworthiness manifests itself in the victim's belief they do not deserve respect, love, safety, caretaking, or choices. And emotional abuse is this intimate abuse. And there's another quote from Andrew Vax, which I'll throw out there. The only difference between physical abuse, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse is the abuser's choice of weapon. They all can be truly debilitating in our lives. I mean, our emotions are how we take in the world, how we take in information, how something makes me feel. Emotional abuse perverts how we interpret what happens. It literally perverts the definition of love. And it has to be, emotional abuse has to be conducted by someone we are close to, we are intimate with. I mean, someone can, a stranger can physically abuse me. A stranger can sexually abuse me. But so I have to be in an intimate, not just sexual, but an intimate relationship, a loving relationship with someone for them to emotionally abuse me. They have to be that, they have to be within our circle of trust. I mean, uh, a cop, a landlord, my employer, they may treat me terribly. They may, aggravate me. They may make me furious. They may be totally unjust with me, but those are not emotional abuse relationships unless I have a person, unless it is my brother or my lover, my partner, just strangers cannot emotionally abuse us. But, uh, and this is why, emotional abuse is so camouflaged. So many of us, we're society, culturally, we're taught, well, it's family. Family always does their best. They love you no matter what. You have to love. The worst part is you have to love them no matter what. And which really we hear that, and if we're also being emotionally abused, then we start denying our own internal feelings, denying. And the first chapter of the book is called "The Perfect Weapon," and because I'm describing emotional abuse as the perfect weapon, because it's the weapon is used against me so often and in such incremental and daily and sometimes, horribly open ways that I learned this is how life is. This is what love is. This is who I am. This must be, yeah, and we internalize all those messages of emotional abuse and we use them to describe ourselves to ourselves. And we take the abuser's weapon and we just use it against ourselves. I'm terrible. I'm stupid. I'm a piece of shit. All that. All that we repeat what they've told us. And because they are our parents, our caretakers, you know, they, they must be telling us the truth. They must know because
I definitely thank you for this insight, Mr. Zach. And that is what people need to understand when it comes to emotions. We do know that every single one of us in the world are emotional, but there are also certain ways emotional emotions can come in. And that is when you said we have to have some kind of intimacy within each other. Like I and my brother, we definitely have some kind of emotional bond. I and my parents, we definitely have some emotional bond. We can't possibly have an emotional bond with a stranger. We could see a stranger, he or she could say some words to one another, but it doesn't affect the emotion. And that is what makes emotions very strong. Emotions connect one another, and anything one says to one person, if someone is emotionally attached to that person, one tends to believe it, whether it's positive or negative. And that is why we need to check on this emotional abuse. It is very important. And mind you, this emotion is also one of the main reasons a lot of people are being manipulated when it comes to love, relationship, and stuff like that, because emotions connect a lot of things. And when the emotions is connected, then every single thing become more difficult for that person to actually explore, because he or she will believe that that is what he or she is, and he or she will want to do whatever he or she wants to do to such person. So it is a very, very powerful source of abuse. I have to be honest, Mr. Zach, and I sincerely appreciate you for the insight. You also offered guidance on how to protect oneself from this emotional abuse, Mr. Zach. So, what do you think are some of the first steps to set these emotional boundaries, Mr. Zach?
and the first step, and like any self-defense, the first step is being able to understand, realize what hurts. You know, like if you and I are training in Muay Thai, right? we're going to find out really quick what hurts and what doesn't. And the stuff that hurts, I want to find a way to counter that and not have it happen again. But emotional abuse, we get hurt and we're told by the person who hurt us, that didn't hurt you. You're just too sensitive. I was joking. You know, I didn't mean it. You made me say that. Let's forget it and start over. All those statements are other insults. After the original insult, someone tells me, Zach, you're stupid. Whatever. My wife wouldn't, but if she every day told me how stupid I was. And if I realize, all right, this hurts that she's telling me this. And I finally say, hey, knock it off, you know? And she said, well, come on. I was just joking, or all those excuses. I was just joking. I didn't mean it. Or I never said that. You're imagining things. All those, all of that is to convince us to ignore not just our own feelings, but to ignore my own perception, to ignore what I see and hear. So we get just inundated. We just get subsumed in nothing but self-doubt. And this just amplifies our anxiety so much. So the first step is always recognizing what hurts, even just to ourselves, to say that hurt. And one of the tricks to doing this is, because we all talk to ourselves all day. When I'm talking to myself, if I'm telling myself, well, that shouldn't hurt. All right, that statement alone should signify, all right, that hurt because I'm telling myself to feel differently than it did, you know? If I'm eating a piece of fish and I'm saying, this shouldn't taste like metal. All right, I got a bad piece of catfish, but I'm not going to keep eating. I'm not going to keep eating it. But with emotional abuse, we keep eating the bad fish and say, no, no, it shouldn't taste like this. There must be something wrong with my tongue, you know? And we literally poison ourselves.
I definitely thank you for this insight. We need to know what really hurts us as a person. We are all human beings and we'll definitely try our best to have this kind of emotions. But if we could recognize what hurts, what gives us that kind of pain, then we could know how we could try our best to battle these emotional feelings and abuse that could be happening to us. Because this thing can definitely happen to anyone. It can definitely happen to anybody really close to us because we definitely have emotional intimacy with someone, whether we like it or not, and we definitely feel down. And that is the time we have to know what hurts. By the time we recognize, oh, this thing really hurts me, then we can know how we could deal with stuff like that to definitely set some boundaries so we won't get to that point. So that is a very, very bright insight. Thank you so much for the insight, Mr. Zach. And also, when someone have to try our best to work on this emotional abuse, check on what really hurts. One, we definitely want to try is our best to rebuild their intuition and their inner voice. How do you think someone can also start to rebuild this their intuition and inner voice after being repeatedly invalidated, Mr. Zach?
Oh, it's hard. It can take a long time because, we could grow up in a family system where emotional abuse is the norm, right? Where it's nothing but passive aggression, little verbal jabs that just cut. But we're told, oh, I was just joking. I think passive aggression is such a misleading and an incorrect term. It's not passive. The aggression is not passive. It's actually camouflaged. It's disguised, but it's still aggression. We're just not supposed to recognize it. We're supposed to be quote unquote nice. And nice is like a word I really attack in the book because it means what nice actually means is don't argue, don't cause any waves, don't make anyone else feel bad by your defending yourself. Don't cause problems. Just go along with whatever's happening. Nice is an absence of behavior. Nice is means Zach will sit there and take it and not start a fight. And I'm not the one starting the fight. You started it with me by attacking me. I'm nice if I don't defend myself. I mean, it's very different than kind. Like someone's kind, they're actually doing something for someone else. But we're so often told to be nice, which means, don't defend yourself. And it very much goes with the idea of, if I even we internalize it to the point where if I even recognize my own pain, I'm not being nice. Because I have to say that person hurt me. That's not nice. So you should be nice. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, we're so socialized to accept emotional abuse.
Yes, and also due to the rise of technology, social media, a lot of people being manipulating, and also stuff like that are also got the point of increase when it comes to emotional abuse. And also, this thing is a very little thing, but this thing can really damage someone in many ways because emotions is something that doesn't just come in. It comes in when we have the kind of developing relationship with someone, probably someone we just met, or probably a parent, or probably a brother or a sister that is we are very close to, and we have to definitely try to know what hurts us. We also need to try our best to see how we could set those boundaries. It is very important because it will not be good if it really hurts us. It undermines us, it's undervalue us, it makes a lot of things more difficult, and it could even make us believe things that are not even meant to be believed, which is not good for us. So we have to know how we could help ourselves because of the huge manipulation and also a lot of things going on outside now. We have to try our best to be emotionally grounded so that we could definitely face the up and down and the triumphs we find in the life we find ourselves currently. And also, Mr. Zach, some people want to know what kind of support are most helpful during this type of circumstances. Probably is community, probably is journaling, so probably is something that could really help them heal better. So, what do you think are some kinds of support which are most helpful during the recovery, Mr. Zach?
That's a tough one because we can often be very isolated in emotional abuse. And we get isolated socially, especially if it's part of our social networks, our families, our friends. If that's the currency everyone speaks with, if that's part of the relationships, and it often can become part of the relationship because if we're raised being emotionally abused, we, like we said, we learn to doubt our own feelings, our own thoughts, our own perceptions. We dismiss that and we take the other person's opinion as law. What they want is more important than what I want. How they feel is more important than how I feel. That creates such a distortion that we carry through life. It's like, if like physical trauma changes how I see the world. You know, if I survive a plane crash, right? Or a car crash or an attack by a cop or, anything, it changes how I see the world. But emotional abuse changes how I see myself. I mean, if every time I get pulled over by the cops, they take me out and beat me with clubs, all right, the next time I get pulled over, I am going to be terrified. I'm going to be ready for it. But emotional abuse doesn't prepare me against attacks. It tells me I am not even worthy of defending myself because I am always wrong. My feelings are wrong. I'm too sensitive. I misunderstand everything. I have to be nice, and it makes us more susceptible to emotional abuse in later relationships. We learn to not recognize warning signs in relationships. And we become we could be very naive, very susceptible. We just, well, although the gut feeling, the hair on the back of your neck that stands up when someone's, lying to you or trying to manipulate you. We are taught to ignore that literally life-saving physical response. And this is the real threat of emotional abuse is we become open to more across our lives. and we don't recognize it as emotional abuse. We just recognize it as I am so faulty. I keep getting into these terrible relationships.
That is why we need to recognize it. That is why we need to understand that these are abuse. These are things that are controlling our emotion. We shouldn't be so. And I also want to say, I think from our childhood is where the issue might also come in. Because as a child, it is very, very powerful. I think the way we groom our child also tells the way the child is going to also, see life and how he or she is going to evolve with life. When a child is being pampered too much, sees how life is more nice, and I think the child will also be really emotionally nice and stuff like that. And he or she might not really be more aware and prepared with what is coming by the way, because there are a lot of emotions that are attached, intimacy that are attached during the life we find ourselves. So as we as people who are also trying to groom people in the coming future, we also have to try our best to prepare our people to also be ready to face all the triumphs, because we are
Hmm.
in a world whereby technology is everywhere. I can go on my phone and contact anyone, and we have to know how we could know what our weaknesses are. We have to know what the pain we are. We have to know our boundaries. We have to know how we could definitely respond to things, and how we could definitely um, know what is right and wrong, so that we could definitely feel a life of fulfillment and a life that we are worthy of, not a life that we are not worthy of. It is very important. So I also sincerely thank you for those beautiful insights. And also, I would like to dive to your book, Emotional Abuse. What do you think is the core message you want every survivor to walk away with after reading your book and also listening to this episode, Mr. Zach?
With the book, I want people to really, really understand first how to recognize emotional abuse, and then how to protect themselves from it. It's really there's two steps to the whole book. I mean that's what I want people to walk away with. But to go back to what you were saying, you're totally 100% right that this is from childhood. This is from infancy where we learn how to interact. I mean, our perception of the world is based on those initial relationships with our parents or whoever our caretakers are when we are helpless babies. We are totally dependent. And I'll just use the term parents for, whatever. Everyone has different lives, but our parents define the world for us. They are the sun and moon. They tell us how everything works. There was a awful experiment from I don't know how many decades ago, but it showed how this happens. It's called the still face experiment. I don't know if you've heard of it. There's a baby and the baby's mom, and the baby's like pre-verbal. Baby doesn't isn't speaking yet. It's tiny. It's in a little bassinet on the table, and the baby and the mom are having a baby talk conversation. You could see, the baby coos and giggles, waves his hands. Mom coos and giggles and waves back, and you can see it's like a conversation. The cadence and the feeling, the affect goes back and forth. It's lovely. The next clip, same baby and the same mom. The baby coos and giggles and starts talking to mom, but mom is totally still. She doesn't respond. She keeps her hands down. She's just staring at the baby. And you can see the baby literally, he has to break, turns his head and pulls his hands in and like takes a breath and tries again and keeps trying. And mom does not respond. And you see the baby literally get more panicky as this happens. His voice is getting sharper. He's starting to drool. He's literally regressing. And at the end of it, he's literally looking at his own hands. Why is this not working? And you can almost read his body language, the little baby body. You can almost read him saying, "I must be doing something wrong here." And this is what the emotional abuse victim. This is what we say. I must be doing something wrong here because this person is hurting me. And this is the genesis of that anxiety, the genesis of our own real terror of being abandoned, you know, that little baby. I mean, it's an awful experiment, but it so explains, because when that feeling is not going back and forth, that's empathy, that's compassion. And that is just like you were saying earlier, that's what builds the world, our feelings, our emotions toward everyone around us. That's what connects us and keeps us in the world. And that's what gives us individually a value, to feel like, yes, I belong here. I am loved, I am cared for.
Yes, awareness is the key. And I'm definitely glad that every single person will definitely be aware of things like this. And one will also try his or her best to see how one can triumph and also solve some kinds of ups and downs that comes by his or her way. Because we will definitely be emotionally intimate with people. We will definitely have some emotional, communication and emotional connections with people. And we have to know how we could deal with it. When it gets to a time, we have to know how we could control it, and we have to know how we could solve the ups and downs, because that is the world that we are currently, and we have to know how we could work with that, because these are the little things we need to know. Emotions is powerful, and emotional abuse is real. We have to know how to deal with it so we can live a happier life and live a life that we are worthy of, a life that we are definitely proud of, a life that no one is defining it for us. We are the one defining it for ourselves, and we're definitely making the most of it positively. And that is the beauty, and that is what every single person wants on earth. And that is why I honestly want to thank you for this beautiful book and also the invitation that you accepted. Thank you so much, Mr. Zach. It is a very, very important thing people need to know. I have to be honest. There is a question I normally ask during the end of the show, Mr. Zach. From our forefathers, from our ancestors. There are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our ancestral time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, Mr. Zach, what do you think that it would be, Mr. Zach?
I I do have I do have very recent ancestor who, if I could bring him back at all, I'm doing it through this book. The person who taught me how to defend myself. So this is how I thank my ancestors who taught me.
Yes, I definitely thank you for that, because our ancestors have really taught us a lot that we definitely need to defend ourselves to become a better person and to become someone that is worthy in the society. And we definitely need to understand, to continue to thank them, and also with what you've done to also appreciate them, to bring it out for people to also understand better. And I also want to use this opportunity to sincerely thank you for the time and the opportunity on speaking on emotional abuse. Thank you so much, Mr. Zach.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Mr. Zach. Have a wonderful day, Mr. Zach. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.